Evening. I'd like to call the Anacortes City Council meeting of June 22nd to order. Ms. Hunt, would you take the roll?
Mr. Carter?
Here.
Mr. Young? Ms. Cleland McGrath?
Here.
Ms. Moulton?
Here.
Mr. McDougall?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Walters? Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. We'll get started with item 2 on the agenda under announcements and committee reports. First of all, I'll start with a COVID update. As of yesterday, in Skagit County, we had 6 new cases. We had no new cases today. That brings us to a total of 485 cases in the county, 419 recoveries, 55 people have been hospitalized, and we've had 15 deaths. Of those cases, 29 of them have been in Anacortes, and I think 1 in the last week or so in that 29. The county is still looking for volunteers to help with the drive-through testing site at Skagit Valley College, so if you're available, they'll train you. You don't have to have any medical background. And the shifts are 8:30 to 1 or 11:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And you can call the DEM, Skagit County's Department of Emergency Management, to volunteer. So we're still in phase 2 of our Safe Start reopening Washington plan. And the earliest we could potentially move to phase 3 is Friday, June 26th. That is the day, if their numbers hold, that the county commissioners will apply for us to go to phase 3. And at this point, if things hold the way they are, we're still qualifying for phase 3 as long as we don't get. So anyway, no more cases is what I'm trying to say. So in the state of Washington today, we have 5 counties that are still in phase 1. We have 19 that are in phase 2, and we have 15 in phase 3, and we have no counties in phase 4 yet. So we're moving along. The directors and the managers this coming Wednesday, we will have our second meeting as we put together our plan for phase 3 at the city. What will be open, how we're opening it, and that type of thing. So I will look forward to briefing you at the next time we meet on how we're doing that. But things like plexiglass at the permit counter, the library, will have some kind of opening. The museum will have opening maybe at the Carnegie Library, but not on the Preston in phase 3 because we can't provide social distancing. So those are the types of discussions that we're going to drill down on Wednesday. The library has been a champion here during phase 2. They have been busy gathering up the 14,000 books that have been out there. We've gotten a good number of them back, and they collect them on Tuesdays and Fridays. Tuesday, anytime between 11 and 4, they get gathered, they get put in carts, they get pushed into another room, and they're not touched for 72 hours. On Friday morning, they pull those books out, they put them on racks or shelves that they can sort, and they put the canvas drop carts in the other room, and they open the drop gates, and they collect the next batch of books, then that will sit from Friday till the following Tuesday. So they've been doing that for a while. And they also have been very successful with our curbside service. What you do is you either call in or you can order online the books you want. And you can order books to be picked up Monday through Friday between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. You order your book online probably the day before. You pull up anytime the next day between 11 and 4. You pull into one of the 1 through 3 parking places that are labeled in the parking lot. They have a phone number you call, and they bring your books out to you curbside. On Friday, I went over and I did a curbside delivery. And then I sat in the parking lot and did my conference call with Councilman McDougall, and watched over 15 people pull up and get service during our 30-minute talk. So it was great to see that in action. So they really have been doing a wonderful job. And then finally on Wednesday, I will be doing my community briefing on COVID-19. That'll be the day after our directors meeting, so I'll have more information on how the city's going to operate. So we are managing COVID, and we're doing quite well. Are there any questions?
Mayor here.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Hey, I just want to thank you for the comprehensive COVID update, just because I know that not everybody's able to tune in on the Wednesday COVID briefing. So thanks for getting all the numbers out there. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I appreciate your feedback.
Mayor here.
Okay. So
Mayor here.
we'll move. Yes, Ms. McDougall.
Just really quickly, my understanding is that while the county is under the number of cases per 100,000 population as of now, but it's kind of close. Like we're there, but it's kind of close. So, okay. Yeah.
Well,
just want to encourage.
The soonest we can apply is June 26th. We could maybe be like this. Maybe it'll be early or mid-July. So there's no guarantees at this point. You're absolutely right.
Well, I want to encourage
wearing our
everyone
masks
to wear
and
masks.
doing our thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Everybody
We all
safe.
want to get to phase 3.
That's
Thank you.
right. Any other feedback on that? Okay. So now we're going to move on to item 2B, which is our fiber committee. Do you have an update, anyone?
Mayor here.
Mr. Miller?
We had a fiber committee meeting last Thursday, and but I don't want to take any of Jim and Emily's thunder, which since we're going to get a full council report, and I'm sure it's going to be a repeat. I will encourage council, and no surprise coming from me, probably the big concern, the mayor and us on the fiber committee, we're looking at some of the labor costs, and I know we'll get a good report here in the next few minutes, but we're looking closely at the numbers, and it's positive, but I know the mayor's taking a good look at the numbers, and I encourage council to listen closely to those numbers. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, we'll look forward to the fiber internet update. The final one is 2C, our planning committee, and you just met, so looking forward to hearing from you.
Mayor Deere?
Yes.
Thanks. Ms. Cleland McGrath and Mr. Walters and I just met with Mr. Miesemer, the planning director, and talked about all kinds of good stuff today. One is conversations with the port are getting ready to continue about their event center and some ideas of connectivity between 9th Street and downtown, no loss of our view corridor, updated parking study that will be presented, and seamless integration with the Depot Plaza. And there has been talk about how best to do that, and if there are some things that we could move around, including potentially the WT Preston and the Maritime Museum. So a lot of fresh creative ideas are in the works. So more forthcoming on that. Talk of a pedestrian promenade and connecting the waterfront and downtown. So good ideas being explored there. We talked about the Small Business Development Grant. Joanne Stewart has done a tremendous job communicating with all the applicants. 16 of them have qualified for funding, and the great news there is that HUD is releasing the funding to the city earlier than we expected. So instead of end of July funding for these businesses, we hope to fund them by the 4th of July. So that's really great news. Also, the chamber has some funding, about $40,000. So all the applicants who didn't qualify were made aware of that, and many of them will apply for chamber funding. We also have an anonymous donor who contributed $2,500 to go toward a small business development grant. And the review committee who worked on this project and did a great job will determine who would be the next in line, who maybe didn't qualify based on an income qualification, because this money isn't subject to those HUD requirements. Right. So that was great news. We talked about the Lakeside Quarry, the Lakeside Industries lease with the city of Anacortes. wherein they quarry rock, and when they sell it, the city gets a percentage of that money. There's a lease involved, and that money has been coming into the city since the late 80s, and it has paid for the purchase of 60 acres of the ACFL, as well as road maintenance and repaving on some of the ACFL roads. So it's been great. So there's talk of renegotiating that lease as it comes up here. So that will be coming forward. Another piece of really good news is we are going to move forward with a critical areas ordinance schedule. So draft 2 will be distributed to City Council and made available to the public on the website on June 29th. And then starting July 20th and every couple weeks from there, we will be having, council will have staff presentations on the whole thing, and the public will be able to follow along with all of that, and we'll have discussion, and we will, as council, come up with a third draft, hopefully by the end of August. And then immediately after that is when we will open it for public comment, public hearings, the whole thing on the entire document. So we'll all be following along together, and it will all be clear as we take draft 2 with the Planning Commission's recommendations for that draft, focus on those, and all move forward together as a community. So it's going to be great. We're really excited to start really going on this. Related to that is the Shoreline Master Program, and the Planning Commission will start working on that. They are going to have laptops and start virtually meeting in July, and they'll start that process. And they'll have virtual workshops, and then we'll have public hearings on that. So that will be coming shortly after Critical Areas Ordinance. And the last thing we talked about is a resolution that will be coming to council, Resolution 2094 for economic recovery, and that will be coming to the council July 6th. And we will establish and adopt a guide for restaurants and retail businesses to use our sidewalks downtown, and also how we'll move forward with commercial avenue closures to motorized vehicles, to cars. So the planning committee is currently reviewing and commenting on that guide that will come forward to council for more comments and eventual adoption once we all agree on what that should look like. A couple of things that are related to that are that the sidewalk use permit fee will be waived for the merchants because they have a lot of other responsibilities, especially the restaurants who will be having the parklets. It's their responsibility to provide tables and planting, so we're not going to charge them to use the sidewalk as we ordinarily would. I think that that's about it, unless Ms. Cleveland-McGrath and Mr. Walters have something to add. Thank you.
Mayor here.
Yep.
The only thing I would add to that is that those things that Ms. Moulton mentioned are a proposal as part of that proposed resolution and are not set in stone yet. Council hasn't adopted it.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Mayor?
Mr. Miller?
Hey, wonderful comprehensive report, but it generated some questions for me. Lakeside Industries lease, do you know when that is due to expire?
I don't know exactly.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then, no, that's okay. It just kind of puts in my mind when we might see it in front of council. And then CDBG, the small business development grants, I recall that's obviously, that has to come back to full council for final approval. Any guess when that's going to happen?
That should be really soon because the money's coming. So I would expect that, since we have next week off because it's the 5th Monday of the month, I would expect that on July 6th. We will confirm with Mr. Miesemer on that. So thanks for asking that.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, that's when the money can really go out to all those folks. So, all right. Hey, I think that was it. Thank you for the report.
Thanks.
Mayor Gear?
Mr. Young?
Yes, just one question too. Just out of curiosity, you mentioned that the Chamber of Commerce also have funds that they're going to be giving out. Can you tell us what was the source of their funds? Was it the same pool or different pool?
It is different money, but I actually don't know the source of their $40,000. I think it actually might be an anonymous donor, but I'm not certain. Mayor
That's
Giordano?
what I think it is
I think
too.
that's correct, Carolyn.
Okay. Thank you, anonymous donor.
Oh.
Mayor, one last thing, unless
Yes, Mr.
under
Young.
announcements and committee reports.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment again about the assembly. It was a sort of protest assembly, but the wonderful thing about it was extraordinary people out at Carsland Park speaking and reading poetry. It was very calm. Wonderful people of diverse hues were there. Saw much of council and also, of course, Mayor Gear. Just the hearts were on the line there, and it was just a wonderful healing process. And I wanted to thank our city for, bringing their heart to the table, listening, as well as demonstrating that they care about everyone. And I just think that we have such a wonderful city. And the discussion, although difficult, it is something that is much needed, and I believe we're on the right track. And I just really want to thank not only you for the leadership that you brought forward, but council and the public for daring to have their voices heard. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to item 3, our consent agenda, items A and B.
Mayor Gear,
Mr. Miller.
I move to approve items A and B on the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Miller, a second by Mr. Young. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Same sign, motion carries. Now we're going to move on to other business under number 4, and it's item 4A, ordinance 3072, amending ordinance number 3032, adopted on December 3rd, 2018, entitled an ordinance adopting the budget for all municipal purposes and for uses of the 2019-2020 biennium. This is an action item, and it's also open for public comment. Ms. Hunt, did we get any comment?
No, we did not, Mayor.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Hoagland.
Thank you, Mayor. So if you can see my screen now, I've got the ordinance up there, ordinance 3072, so a budget amendment for the current year, 2020. We revisited this a little bit, so hopefully it's a little more clear than it was last week, but wanted to run through this real quickly again. There's actually 3 parts to this budget amendment. The first part has to do with the general fund, and these departments listed right here within the top part of this matrix that's within the ordinance. These departments have budget adjustments identified that total $735,000. So the $735,000 within the general fund, those departmental budgets will be reduced, and the amount of fund balance that the general fund is balanced with, that the general fund budget is balanced with, will be reduced by that same amount, $735,000. So because of the double entry accounting, the adjustment to the budgets will be offset with an adjustment to fund balance. The second part of this is the funds where we identified budget savings that are not part of the general fund. So they're separate standalone funds, the Parks Fund, Cemetery Fund, Library, Street Maintenance, and Ambulance Service. So the adjustments identified in those funds total $929,212. Now that $929,000, each of those entries will be offset by the same amount in property tax revenue reduction in each of those funds. So the total then of the $929,000, there will be that much property tax savings, and we will establish a revenue line in the general fund for that same amount. So that'd be the third part of this budget adjustment. So we're reducing existing general fund expenditures, offset with fund balance, reducing other governmental fund expenditures, offset with property tax, and establishing a property tax revenue line in the general fund for $929,000. And so that's important because the general fund will need those additional resources to continue providing basic services. I can't figure out how to navigate there. I apologize. I did include in the council packet a list of BARS numbers, and it's every BARS number that will be affected by the budget adjustment. So that's this Excel worksheet here. And all of the BARS numbers that start with 001 are part of the general fund. And you can see you can scroll through the list and come down at the bottom, you can see how it sums to that $735,000 and then offset with that same amount to the general fund balance. And then this is the entry where we will establish the revenue line, property tax revenue line in the general fund, $929,000, and then the other entries in the other funds. So I want to make sure that's clear. So the two parts to the general fund, the $700,000, the $735,000, that's just a reduction in budget. It's not saving money at this time. It's saving money in the future because it reduces the amount of authorized budget that the departments can spend. This $929,000 is increasing the revenues in the general fund through property tax allocation, and that comes from those budget reductions in those other funds.
And I'd like to just state for the viewing public that we're doing this because of the COVID-19 pandemic and projected shortfalls in our budget. If they're just tuning in tonight, they'd say, why are we doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the sum of it. I hope that's a little more clear than it was last week. I am happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Mayor Deere?
Mr. Miller?
I just wanted to say that I appreciate your rewording the ordinance. It makes, at least to me, it makes it a little more clear what we're doing.
Are there any other questions? We've had no public comment.
All right, Mayor Deere, since I'm
Mr. Miller?
still talking, I move that we approve ordinance 3072, amending ordinance number 3032.
Thank you.
Second?
Is that Carolyn?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Miller, a second by Ms. Moulton. Is there any additional conversation? Ms. Hunt, would you call for the vote?
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Ms. Cleveland McGrath?
Yes.
Ms. Moulton?
Yes.
Mr. McDougall?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So now we're on to item 4B, Access Anacortes, the fiber internet update. Ms. Shu.
Thank you. Can you see my,
Yep.
the front page? Okay, thank you. Tonight, I am pleased to provide an update on Access Anacortes Fiber Internet, the June update. Last week, we hit a significant mark in the business where we surpassed 200 paying customers. So we just celebrated that as a team, and then did a team photo. Somebody mentioned that they thought we looked like the mafia standing there. So, but I think that this is just a nice visual to see that when I presented in May, we had 138 paying customers, and that has increased to 209 over the past month. And of course, that means that our revenue has increased as well. This is another way to look at the orders. And you can see that we are moving up in terms of our take rate in each of the 3 pilot areas, the CBD, Old Town, and M Avenue. And we've broken out aerial areas 2, 3, 4, and 6, and aerial areas 1 and 5. So you can see the percent in service. We transitioned to beginning the installations in M Avenue on Friday. And so you'll see that number start to, an uptick in the number in service along M Avenue in the coming weeks. So right now we have 78.5% of our pre-ordered service in Old Town actually in service. Down below is a little bit of information about the breakdown of what those customers look like. The breakdown between 100 megabits per second and a gigabit, and the different static IP addresses. And our revenue is increasing as well as we're continuing to bring more into service. This is I'm trying to use a consistent format as I'm sharing this information every month, but this is the customer orders throughout the city of Anacortes. Red are ones that we have not yet installed, but you can see that we have a nice amount of interest throughout the city. The areas that are highlighted are areas that are pilot areas or aerial expansion areas. And specifically in this Old Town area, you can see, and in the commercial business district, more and more of those areas are green, meaning that they're in service. We couldn't do it without our installation crew, and I just thought it would be nice to just see some feedback that we're receiving from customers, that people are really enjoying the experience that they're having, and we're very appreciative of the customer service that all of our staff provide to make it a really accessible service to the community, and that we're just available, that when you pick up the phone to call with a question, you're going to get somebody here at City Hall who's answering that call and then responding out. And I think that that's something that really differentiates us from other service providers. For the viewing public, we wanted to just remind people that we are doing in-home installations, but we are following the guidelines for the construction job sites. There are 30 specific guidelines that we are following to ensure that it is safe both for our customers, but also for our staff that are out in the field. We're also continuing to provide no-contact service installations for people that just don't feel comfortable having anybody enter their home. And some people are still utilizing this option, but so we wanted to remind people that that is still an option. Our 2020 expansion areas we have talked about previously. Aerial areas 2, 3, 4, and 6, the materials are on order. The RBC Robinson Brothers construction contract was approved by council on May 26th, and they will begin work in late July. So we are expecting the week of July 20th that they will begin those 4 aerial areas. In aerial area 1 and 5, we have the materials ordered, and we'll be presenting a contract modification in the coming weeks to continue that work while they're here. We do have customers who are signing up that are not on the GPON network. The Samish Indian Nation will be working with them to provide connections at 4 of their facilities. The master service agreement was approved by council on June 15th, and the Samish are currently looking at the right of entry that was presented to them. The installation costs are going to be reimbursed by a grant that the Samish have received, and we'll make sure that that is complete before the end of the year. We also are working with Ion Hospital. They would like a dark fiber lease for 3 different facilities. The hospital to the teen clinic, the hospital to the sleep center, and the hospital to Mount Vernon. And this will be a 31-month initial lease term that we are working on. NOAANET has placed an actual order for the K-20 contract, and so we will begin that service in late July. And they have requested a quote for another Ethernet circuit that we have responded to. So very frequently when there's something going on at a national level, there will be a request for proposal, and we'll be asked to submit a quote to be able to respond to that. So we'll keep you updated as those are coming through. And as we just was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, our fiber committee meeting was very much presented about the financial environment that we are in as we complete the 2019-2020 biennium and begin looking forward to the 2021-2022 biennium. So we are meeting very regularly with the mayor, the fiber committee, and our finance director as we are talking about forecasting our revenue, what our projected construction spending will be, and exploring different options for how we would be able to pay for continued expansion of the network. This afternoon, Mr. Lemberg and I actually spent a couple hours studying the USDA soil survey for Anacortes, and we were actually very pleased that a lot of areas, the majority of areas in Anacortes that are remaining will be served by underground construction. But the majority of Anacortes actually does not get down to rock until you get down to 3 or 4 feet. So that was a nice surprise as we were going through and mapping out potential areas for expansion next year, but also into 2022. Really the rockiest area in the city is Capsani. So it's been interesting, just the different ways that we're looking at how to do this. And we were pleasantly pleased that there was a lot of area that we think will be, while it will be underground, that it will not be boring through rock to be able to bring people into service. So we are exploring different construction options. And with that, I'm just bringing up the map of where our expansion areas in Anacortes will be through the remainder of this year, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Issue just for the, Mayor dear.
Yes, Mr. McDougall.
Mr. just for the information to be spread to council, the phase 2 or the areas 1 through 6, some of those areas, there is some underground, although it's dirt. Do you recall what the percentage? It's like roughly 80% above ground, 20% underground, something like that.
We think that the majority of areas in this expansion area, we selected those specific areas because they are aerial. So we think that that is aerial work. We have found that there are some homes that have been built after, I think, 1976, and so the installation to their home may be underground, but they're aerial poles to do the backbone work.
Oh.
Thank you.
Good. Any other comments? Great report, Emily.
Ms. Chu, I have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm just curious because I get questions from constituents. If the home is on the other side of the street from the boundary of the different sections that we're working on, are they able to get service if they're on the non-colored in side, or is that not feasible?
It will be the further, most likely the easiest way for us to get service is when we fill in these areas on the map this upcoming year, which would help provide service to them on the other side of the street.
Okay. Thank you.
That's one of the things that Mr. Lundberg and I were talking about today, is that we have to draw lines as we're building the expansion areas, and we always end up with somebody on the other side of the street. You know, that's the hard part, unless we're circling the whole island, and that's our intent long term.
Okay. Rest of the council, any comments?
Mayor Gear?
Mr. Miller?
So we didn't talk too deeply into the financial part that we talked about it more in the fiber committee. Like the good news is we have a good product and people are taking the product, but as we all know on council, this will be successful only if we have a certain number of customers. And some of the concerns that I know the mayor, the rest, and I know the entire fiber team is concerned about some of the costs and being able to cover those costs and looking at and it's important for us to know as a whole council, as we move to the next budget, how much more we're going to feel comfortable authorizing for fiber if we aren't on a good trajectory. Again, I think we're on a good trajectory, but the labor costs currently seem a little high to me at about $65,000 just for our costs a month. So you keep that in the back of your mind, and I do the rough math of you need about 1,000 customers to cover that. So as we're getting these monthly reports, we just need to have in the back of our mind, you know, a real target for success. Again, I think we can get there. It's just, and the good news is those were the numbers that we were kind of looking at when we first started.
Right.
Right. You know, 1,500 total customers gets us to where we're starting to be able to pay back the loan. So again, good stuff, but we're going to have to talk in a little more detail as the months progress when we come to the next budget cycle.
So, Mr. Miller, I know Emily and Jim are supplying Steve with costs, and then Steve and I are going to meet on potential funding sources, and we'll work in our proposal for all of you to look at and consider as we move forward. But like Mr. Miller said, we have a great product. It's a startup business, so there's, you know, we have to fund it before we see payday. But based on what we're seeing now, I think, you know, in a couple of years, we're going to be in good shape, but it's just getting through this transition time. So we'll work hard to keep everyone informed and give you our best ideas on funding and let you decide what we're going to do for the next step.
And so we're meeting internally regularly with Mr. Hoagland to go over not our projected operating expenses and our capital expenses moving forward. We're also having those conversations with Mayor Gear. So that is very much in the forefront as we move into the budget preparation.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. Okay, are there no other comments tonight? All right, well, at this time then, if there's nothing else to discuss, I will adjourn the meeting. Go and enjoy your sunny night in Anacortes. Thank you all. Good night.